Andrew Trimble's warning. Why being liked again would signal trouble for Ireland. Former Ireland and Ulster winger Andrew Trimble has delivered a strikingly honest and deliberately uncomfortable assessment of where Irish rugby currently stands, warning that it would be a deeply worrying sign if Andy Farrell's side were to lose the fear factor that once defined them. Speaking ahead of the opening weekend of the Six Nations, Trimble admitted he is worried about Ireland's immediate prospects. Following an 18-month downer in both performances and results that has punctured the aura they had built as one of world rugby's dominant forces. For Trimble, the issue runs deeper than wins and losses. It's about perception, about whether Ireland are still viewed as a genuine threat by the sport's biggest powers, or whether that hard-earned respect is beginning to slip away. From standard-bearers to uncertainty between 2022 and 2025, Ireland enjoyed arguably the most successful period in their rugby history. They claimed 2 Six Nations titles, including a Grand Slam, completed a historic series victory over the All Blacks in New Zealand, and sat atop the world rugby rankings for more than a year. Under Farrell, Ireland were not just winning. They were imposing themselves, playing with clarity, cohesion, and ruthless efficiency. Crucially, they forced their way into the inner circle of rugby's elite. New Zealand and South Africa no longer saw Ireland as plucky challengers. They saw them as equals. Rivals prepared differently. Fans responded emotionally. Matches crackled with edge. Ireland, for the first time, were hated. And that, according to Trimble, was exactly where they needed to be to jolt back to reality that status is now under threat. A bruising November series, which saw Ireland beaten convincingly by both South Africa and New Zealand, has raised uncomfortable questions about whether Farrell's side have stalled or even regressed as the next World Cup cycle begins. The results themselves were damaging, but the manner of the defeats was perhaps more telling. Ireland looked reactive rather than authoritative, struggling to impose their game against opponents who appeared both physically and psychologically ahead. Heading into the Six Nations, uncertainty has replaced confidence, and Trimble believes that shift is deeply significant. I'm worried enough about this week. I'm worried enough about 2 weeks after that at Twickenham, he said on Off the Ball's Rugby Roadshow. I think that's a reflection of where we're at. There's a nervousness and an anxiety that we haven't felt in Irish rugby for a number of years. Those words alone would have seemed unthinkable just 2 seasons ago. Why being hated matters. Trimble's most striking point, however, wasn't about form, injuries, or selection. It was about rivalry. In his view, elite teams are defined not just by trophies, but by the intensity of the opposition's response to them. When you matter, you're targeted. When you threaten, you're resented. And when that hatred fades, something has gone wrong. Mike Tyndall, you talk about hate, Trimble said. We developed this rivalry with South Africa. As far as South Africa was concerned, we didn't even exist until 5 years ago. That changed dramatically as Ireland rose to prominence. South African fans, players, and media began to engage, often aggressively, with Irish rugby discourse. All of a sudden, these South African internet gremlins, they are incredible. They have their presence felt on every internet forum. To Trimble, that hostility was proof of progress. You're saying make England hated again. It is a badge of honor when you're disliked, he added. That's the reason I've always hated Leinster. This has been my most enjoyable experience at the RDS. Behind the humor lies a serious point. Elite teams provoke emotional responses. They are feared, targeted, obsessed over. Lose that, and you risk slipping back into irrelevance. Rivalries fading, danger signs emerging. Trimble believes Ireland's most intense rivalries, particularly with South Africa, have begun to cool, and that should set alarm bells ringing. Being hated is a badge of honor, and we should aspire to be hated by New Zealand, by South Africa, because we're on their radar, he said. Those rivalries became really intense, and it's definitely dropping off. The November series offered a brutal illustration of that shift. South Africa arrived in Dublin not just intent on winning, but on making a statement. We saw the impact of where that rivalry went and how much South Africa wanted to punish us in November, Trimble said. They did exactly that. Ireland weren't merely beaten. They were physically dominated, emotionally rattled, and denied the space and tempo that had once underpinned their success. At a brutal Six Nations opener, if Ireland are to rediscover that edge, they face a daunting, immediate test. Thursday's Six Nations opener against defending champions France at the Stade de France is among the most demanding fixtures in world rugby. And it arrives at a moment when Ireland are stretched thin. The injury list alone would trouble any side. Ireland are without British and Irish Lions props Andrew Porter and Tadhg Furlong, while additional loosehead options Paddy McCarthy and Jack Boyle are also sidelined. For Trimble, that absence could prove decisive. The scrum is getting more and more important, he warned, and it's a bad week to be missing 3 of your best looseheads. Against a French pack renowned for its power, depth, and bench impact, Ireland's front row resources will be tested relentlessly. Physical edge and psychological ground, this is not simply a tactical concern. It's a symbolic one that Ireland's rise was built on parity up front. They matched the traditional heavyweights physically, denied them dominance at the set piece, and then punished them with speed and precision elsewhere. Lose that foothold, and the entire system creaks. France, particularly at home, thrive on imposing themselves early. If Ireland struggle in the scrum, the knock-on effects, territory, pressure, confidence, could quickly snowball. And in Trimble's eyes, that would further reinforce the sense that Ireland are no longer setting the agenda. Farrell's defining challenge, none of this, is to suggest that Ireland are suddenly a spent force. Farrell remains one of the sharpest coaches in the game. The squad still contains world-class talent. The systems are largely intact, but transitions are rarely smooth, and Ireland are now navigating life after several defining figures, both in personnel and psychology. The challenge for Farrell is not simply to win matches. It is to re-establish Ireland's identity as a side that others fear. That means restoring physical authority. It means clarity at key positions. And perhaps most importantly, it means rekindling the sense that beating Ireland matters deeply to their rivals, because it once did. At a moment that will shape the narrative. Thursday night in Paris will not define Ireland's entire Six Nations campaign, but it will shape the narrative that a competitive, defiant performance, even in defeat, could reinforce the idea that Ireland remained firmly in the hunt. A heavy loss, particularly up front, would intensify doubts about whether the edge that once separated them from the pack has dulled. Trimble's warning, though uncomfortable, cuts to the heart of elite sport. When opponents fear you, they obsess over you. When fans hate you, it's because you matter. And when that hatred fades, it's often because something has been lost. For Ireland, the task now is not to seek approval, but to re-earn hostility. Because if they start being liked again, Andrew Trimble fears it won't be a compliment. It'll be a warning.